angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of SkyWatchTV.
It may shock you to learn that North Korea may have the means to destroy life as we know it here in the United States. Welcome to SkyWatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. We're talking about a film that will open your eyes. At least that's our prayer. It's called Amerigeddon. We'll talk with the producer and writer of the film. But first, we want to show you this.
The reason I'm here today is to encourage the U.S. Congress to take action to protect our country from its most imminent threat. Electricity would cease, the internet would go down, and the banking system.
The smokescreen of national security used by government at every level.
A strong America is the only thing standing in the way. Country only needs a little chaos.
We have a fog that has descended on our entire nation.
Hello, Mr. President. Now is the time.
The average American family only has 3 days of food.
We need to talk face to face. This is important.
Sir, what's the mission? Disarm the population and restore order.
Do you have any weapons inside your home or on your person?
You had to give the president power to arrest any American by simply accusing them of terrorism.
The vanity of nationalism will quickly fade. These are but the birth pangs of a new world order.
I'm just so afraid of the world that you're gonna have to grow up in.
This is a time, man, woman, young or old, when folks run and hide, or they pull up their bootstraps and they fight.
When you sell your soul, it's a one-time thing. There's no going back.
It's shocking to realize that we're just a few days away from the breakdown of society here in the United States, but that is a fact. It is something that there are voices now beginning to warn us about it, and one of those is with us today, the producer, writer, and a familiar face from the trailer of the film Amerigeddon, Gary Heavin. Gary, welcome back to SkyWatch TV.
Thank you, Derek.
The film opens May 13th, and in the film you make a very dire prediction about what would happen to life as we know it in the United States in the event of an electromagnetic pulse, knocking out the electric grid, electronics, transportation, banking. It would basically, life as we know it would be set back 125 years. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's very accurate. For people that may not know what an EMP is, a nuclear device that's detonated at a high altitude over the center of our country sends out an electromagnetic pulse or gamma rays that have the ability to completely destroy everything electronic. Particularly vulnerable is the electrical grid. It travels through the wires, destroys the transformers. Then these transformers are not readily available. Most of them come from China now. They take several years to build. Imagine our country without electricity. Mm-hmm. You would have no internet. You would have no banking. You would not have access to your money. You would have no refrigeration. You would have no water.
Right.
We would be back to the 1800s. And this threat is more and more on the headlines of the news over the course of this year. On February 7th, the North Koreans launched a second satellite that travels over the United States 3 times a day. The North Koreans, in the news, have been developing miniaturized nuclear devices that would fit very nicely on top of a satellite. And these nuclear devices are low detonation, but high gamma ray producing, which means they're designed for EMP. And so this is mainstream news. It's being reported, but mainstream media is not putting it together to what it means for you and I. There were 2 congressional reports 5 or 6 years ago in front of the United States Congress that assessed the threat of an EMP to America. And both congressional reports said that it is the greatest threat that our country faces, and that we need to harden our grid and protect it from these EMP risk. And of course, nothing has been done. Our country is more vulnerable today than they were when these reports came out. And this is a very, very serious issue. So, you know, as a watchman on the wall, as a Christian, I believe it's my job to inform people. And doing it in a movie is a way to entertain them while we teach them. And that's the purpose of the movie Amerigeddon.
The bulk of the American population living in cities, they're in trouble. You know, we out here in the Ozarks, we've got a little land around us. We've got the capability, if need be, to convert our lives over, not without some difficulty, but at least convert our lives over to living the way the Amish are still living today. Yeah. I knew a bunch of them back in Illinois, and used to joke that when things really hit the fan, I'd be moving in. But the truth is that they will be fine. But the rest of us who've forgotten the skills that they still know, or most of us anyway, who've forgotten those skills, will really be in trouble. But at least in the country, we've got an opportunity to make this conversion. In the cities, you don't have access to a water source. You don't have access to, say, a game where you might be able to go out and hunt or fish and provide for your family. It's going to come down to who is the most willing to use force to take from others, it seems to me. At this point in the United States, most of us, again, still in rural areas, have access to personal protection. But one of the aspects of the film that we didn't really touch on last time is that the government is not necessarily in favor of you and me being able to protect our families. What do you see happening in the event that things break down? How is the government approaching this this particular aspect of you know, the Second Amendment?
One of the underlying themes of the movie, of course, is what the government does to separate you from your ability to protect yourself and your family. And again, we have a president who on a weekly basis comes out and states his goal of disarming the American people. It is his agenda, and he's wide open about it. And we have a Democratic Party in this country who it's a mainstay of their platform to take away our right to defend ourselves. We show in the movie, you know, how we use our self-defense measures. In fact, there's a battle scene where I'm flying a helicopter, I'm a helicopter pilot, against a UN helicopter with rockets. And so we use all of our resources to protect ourselves from an out-of-control government. Now, you know, there's a great Second Amendment theme to our movie, which is so important in the times we're living in right now. We need to wake the American people up and let them know that their ability to protect themselves and their families is at risk to this current administration. And you know, what's the motive? Why would the government want to take away our weapons?
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you really think it through, it comes down to they want to acquire power over us. They want us to literally be serfs to their authoritarianism. This is a huge issue. You know, I'm so proud of the National Rifle Association and so many Americans that have taken a stand on being able to own a firearm. And there's going to come a time when it becomes a life and death issue. You mentioned the cities and how unsafe they're going to be. You know, the average American family has 3 days of food. So we probably have about 3 days before absolute chaos breaks out. I don't know that the Amish have weapons.
Well, I don't know that they do either.
And I tell you what, it doesn't matter how far away you are or how many resources you have if you can't protect them.
Right.
And it's going to be a very, very dark time. Now, without painting an ugly picture of things, there is light. You know, we should prepare. We should have food on hand and water on hand, fuel, cash. And if we're prepared, it's going to be less unpleasant. and we will have a chance to survive. And I fortunately live in a place like Texas where we are more serious about self-sufficiency and independency, and also about protecting ourselves from the overreach of an out-of-control government. So if you live in Illinois, where you're from, in the past, if you live in New York or California, I just have great pity for you.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I got to know a lot of people in the southern half of the state in Illinois the last 5 years or so, and their attitude about life is a lot more like us here in the Ozarks than it is for folks around Chicago. Growing up in Chicago, I've had to relearn a lot of things in my adult life that living in a big city, I think, just kind of skews your worldview. My mother was raised on a farm in North Dakota, and she's now finally seeing at the age of 54 there's some hope for her son in understanding the way of the world.
Yeah.
The United Nations and the U.S. relationship to the UN, how does that impact, or might that impact us in the event that things break down?
John Kerry, the Secretary of State, signed onto a UN treaty that states that we would disarm our population. And why would the United Nations, which is the precursor to a one-world government, want us disarmed? Well, they want us to be obedient. They want us to be serfs. And he signed on to it, illegally, by the way, but it exists right now. Also, they have signed on to the UN as a backup in case of an emergency, where the UN and their troops would come into our country to maintain order. At this moment, there are Russian and Chinese troops that are in this country under the command of the UN in training to separate us from our weapons and to maintain order. And this is not conjecture. This is fact, and it's easy to prove. And it goes back to people need to do the hard work of informing themselves and also thinking clearly about these things. They don't do these things by accident. There's a purpose for it. And people in this country need to realize they need to wake themselves up. There's something, it's called a normalcy bias. And I have a background in counseling, and we tend to deal with things that are threatening to our way of thinking or our status by denying them.
Yeah.
And the more vested we are in our circumstances, the more creative we can become in denying the evidence that we're having to face. So people need to cast off their normalcy bias and just start thinking clearly. If Obama says he's going to come get our guns, you probably ought to take him at his word. If they sign a treaty with the UN that allows them to bring in Russian and Chinese troops to maintain order, well, you probably ought to believe that that's for a designed purpose. And another one, of course, is the banking situation. They're spending us into a catastrophe, and they have codified into law through Dodd-Frank that when a bank fails, that your money in the bank will be taken, and you will be given bank stock, which is basically worthless, in exchange for your money. So there is no FDIC protection of your money. It has been substituted for bank stock because you really won't have lost your money.
And we're seeing this happen. For people who think that this is far-fetched, this has happened in Cyprus, where the banks there failed, and creditors, people with money deposited in the banks were so shocked to find out that they were actually considered unsecured creditors. The Trudeau government in Canada, just this week, as we record this, announced that they're going to propose bail-in legislation. Sounds great from a taxpayer standpoint. Hey, why should we taxpayers be on the hook for bailing out these financial institutions? But yeah, your checking account is a loan to the bank that they can confiscate to bail in the bank and keep it solvent.
I read that, or I thought that was funny, to save the taxpayers. The only problem is the taxpayers are the depositors in the bank.
Yes.
They're going to get it either way.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Used to be the bank robber would walk in, now the one with the stocking over his head is the one behind the teller. Want to find out more about the movie and the experience of watching Hollywood types come to grips with the information in the movie Amerigeddon. Our discussion with Gary Heavin continues after this. Most American families are just 72 hours away from disaster. Here at SkyWatch TV, we hope we can help avoid that.
I have been given permission to tell about this massive deal. There's one packet where you get one of each of these, breakfast and entree buckets, and again, 25 years shelf life. With that, you will get 15 of these Wise Fire packets. You'll get 1 of this water bottle. It will filter 99.9% of the impurities out of your water. Also, you will get for free this awesome auto kit.
Now, there's another package.
There are 2 more packages. The second package, you get 3 of each bucket. You pay for those, and you get the auto kit free, you get the Wise Fire free, and you get 2 of these bottles. There's a third deal. You won't believe this one. You get 6 of each of these. You get the auto kit free, you get the Wise Fire free, you get 2 bottles. Guess what else? You get the Mac Daddy.
Ooh.
50-gallon water storage container. If the electric grid goes down, one of these is going to come very handy.
3 packages for preparedness, 1 that feeds a family of 6 for a month, 1 that feeds a family of 6 for 3 months, and 1 that feeds a family of 6 for half a year, and of course that includes the 50-gallon water tank. You'll find all of those deals online, the Wise Food Preparedness specials at SkyWatchTVstore.com. The movie is Amerigeddon. It's a stark look at what might happen in the event of an EMP in the United States. Opens in theaters May 13th. Gary Heavin, before getting to the experience of some of the Hollywood actors that you worked with on the film, as a successful businessman, decades of building a nationwide chain of women's health centers across the country, women's fitness centers across the country, you obviously had to deal with government regulations and tax law and things like that. How did that experience prepare you for writing about government in the movie Amerigeddon?
It did in several ways. We became the 10th largest of all franchise companies in the world. We have locations in 90 countries. For example, we have 200 locations in the Ukraine. So I have personal relationships with Ukrainians on the East and the West and how they're having to deal with their government.
Right.
My good friend from Cyprus had just sold her home when the Cypriot bank went on holiday. And she was bailed in her life savings, lost her life savings.
Wow.
And I talked to her each week through that process. We have Curves locations all over Russia, China, lots of interesting places. So not only have I had to learn how to deal with the Chicago City Council telling shopping center owners what they could put in their own shopping centers and that nonsense, but I've had to deal with the communist government in China, getting our business plan approved and able to do business in the country. So I've had a really neat worldwide perspective. And I think that prepared me to really understand power and how it's acquired and how it's used. And so when I come back home to America and I see the abuse that our government is imposing on our citizenry, everything from sending our kids to wars that we have absolutely no interest in,
right,
like the Ukraine. That's a moneyed interest war. It's all about Monsanto and them acquiring access to the breadbasket of Europe or the oil companies. So I'm able to really see things more clearly from a much higher perspective as I look down on it. Even a movie becomes the ability to tell a story from a much higher altitude than most people have a chance to do that. So I tell you, government is a necessary evil, but the less of it you have, the better. And we can't have chaos, but we can't have open borders with unvetted Syrians that a percentage of them are radicalized. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, 10 years ago, as I was hosting a daily secular talk show, was talking about then the percentage of OTMs, or other than Mexicans, that were being apprehended as they crossed the border into your state of Texas. So this is not a new situation. This has been ongoing for a long time. But even if we look at history, and this is the comment that intrigued me about Ukraine and getting access to that market. When we look at the history of the Roman Republic and how it became the Roman Empire, we see that there are parallels to what's happening today. There were Roman senators who were agitating for war with Pontus and Parthia because they're bad, but in fact they were really trying to get the concessions to sell, to the spice trade, to that part of the world.
Yeah.
Things really haven't changed all that much. Humans really haven't changed at all over the millennia.
Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. And it's just amazing that I have to defend the American people a little bit. People are struggling. It's harder to find a job. It's harder to make ends meet. And so it's hard to find time to stay aware, abreast of things as they happen. But I really want to encourage the American people to take time to pay attention to what's going on around them and to think clearly through this. I like to think my movie is a way to teach people while we entertain them, and which is why I really got into the movie business. I saw a chance to really inform people and wake them up and warn them while we entertain them. And I think it's going to be a very effective platform. A movie comes out May 13th in theaters around the country. You want to go to the website, AmerigeddonTheMovie.com. And it'll show you where the theaters are available. And come to this thing and bring your friends. It's not just a movie; it's a movement. We're trying to wake the American people up to the dangers of an out of control central government bears on us. We've had over 1 million people watch the trailer already, and a lot of people are excited about this. Hollywood is opposed to this movie, because we are telling the truth about reality in this country, about power. And what a great time to, you've got Donald Trump, bit of a mess, I think we can all agree on that, but he is anti-establishment.
Yeah.
He is telling the truth, and millions of Americans see an opportunity to take their country back. Our country has been stolen by these moneyed interests, by these people in power. And it's both sides of the aisle.
Yes.
And I'm excited that so many Americans right now are believing that we can take our country back.
Yeah. And I joke about kind of growing up in a bubble in the city of Chicago, but Hollywood is even more of an insulated bubble, insulated from reality. And obviously you had to work with Hollywood actors, crew people, and so forth in this film. Diane Ladd, you mentioned, who's just a wonderful actress. Did I recognize Dina Meyer in the trailer? Okay. The director, Mike Norris, who probably hates being called Chuck's son, but that's who he is. What worldview did he bring to the film, and how did the film change the actors and actresses who were in it?
That's a great question. Mike Norris, Chuck's son, has been, he was the director of over 100 of the Walker TV shows. And so he honed his director skills under his dad's authority and became a great director. And he was in the business of making Christian movies. In fact, our first movie together is Missionaire, which you can watch on Netflix. So when I went to Mike, and he's been a friend of mine a long time, I said, look, I want to make a movie that's going to make a difference. I think I'm a watchman on the wall. And we need to warn the American people what Congress calls the greatest threat to our country. And so as Mike and I co-wrote the script and began to make the movie, you could see the onion literally peeling back each day as I would introduce him to the reality of what's going on. And onions make you cry.
Yeah.
And so did peeling this onion back with Mike. It was actually funny to watch. And he was a good example because he's kind of the Hollywood guy, to realize how vulnerable we are as a citizenry to our out of control federal government. And so that was a great process. Now, his dad is a great patriot, and we're proud that he's supporting our movie. And I think he's really proud of his son, because this movie's out on the edge. When Mike went to his dad and showed him the script, his father put the script down and he looked at him and he said, "Are you ready to die for this?"
That's an interesting question.
Yeah. And Mike had to think about it for a few minutes, and he said, "Well, Dad, yeah, I think I am." Truth tellers in this country are not dealt with very well. And so you'd ask me, I've got a great career, I'm a wealthy guy, I'm healthy, I've got time. Why would I put myself at risk to do this? And as a Christian, I just have a commitment to be obedient. It's funny, God didn't require sacrifice, he requires obedience. Now, sometimes that obedience ends up sacrificial, but he wants you to go when he tells you and where he tells you to, and he wants you to be willing. And God has blessed me in my life, first of all, in my salvation, but then in so many other facets that I have no hesitation. When I felt called to warn the people about the threat that their government has created for them, I was willing to go.
Yeah, Christians, conservative Christians, tend to be among the most patriotic Americans. How difficult do you think it'll be for Christians who tend to see the United States as a force for good in the world as a threat to their very survival?
Let me give a political answer first. There's two types of Republicans. There's the neoconservatives, which believe that we should export democracy and freedom to other countries. And hopefully those that were sincere about it have awakened, and realized that you just can't export democracy to a place like Iraq.
Right.
And it was never really about that with the neocons. It was really more about an allegiance to the moneyed interests, the military-industrial, massive complex that funds our political process.
Right.
And so I hope that those sincere conservatives wake up to the danger of the neocons. The neocons are not interested in democracy. They're interested in money.
Yeah.
And as a conservative Christian, I hesitate to use the word Republican right now, because it affiliates me with people in the Republican Party that are bought and paid for and are taking our nation down because of the moneyed interest. So I would differentiate the two. And if you're a conservative Christian, I think the most patriotic thing you can do, if you want to support your troops, it is to keep our country from sending them to places that we have no interest.
That's right.
Like Syria, like Iraq and Afghanistan, and like the Ukraine. I support my troops, okay? I'm fighting to keep them here and safe and not in wars that only are in the moneyed interest.
Yeah, it is kind of a disappointing day when you finally wake up and realize that the United States isn't what we thought it was as kids.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. It's hurtful to criticize your country,
right?
But it's stupid to not deal with reality. And I love what my country used to be, and I want it back.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't love what my country is today. I want to take it back, and I believe that thoughtful Christian conservatives agree with me on that.
The movie is Amerigeddon. It opens in theaters on May 13th. And Gary, the website again is?
AmerigeddonTheMovie.com.
Gary Heavin is the producer and writer of the film. Get a group together and watch it. And be prepared to shift your paradigm. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.